Hi guys, Isaac here from Homeowner DIY. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the front passenger side lower ball joint in my 2000 Honda Civic behind me. Now guys, when your ball joints go bad, you're going to hear a creaking type of sound. I'm going to do two quick tests so you guys can hear what it sounds like. But your ball joints are part of your suspension system. And when they go bad, they start to make an annoying noise, and it's gotten to the point it's just driving me mad. But what I'll do right now is I'll show you two quick tests, and then we'll do material and tools. It seems to be a lot worse turning it to the right. But guys, you hear the sound, so what I'll do is I'll do one other quick little test before we get started. Alright guys, this is our second test. Alright guys, this is our materials list. So we have gloves. Our ball joint is a Delphi. This is our actual ball joint, what it looks like. It has a C-clip and then a cotter pin. We have brake cleaner. We have penetrating oil, and then we have grease. Guys, this is what I believe I need to do this job. So what we'll do now is the tools list. Alright guys, this is our tools list. So we have standard sockets. We have a bungee cord. This will be to hang up the caliper. We have an impact socket set. This will be for the lug nuts as well as the screws for the rotor. 1/2 inch impact, jack stand, earplugs, safety glasses, big flathead, small sledgehammer, needle nose pliers, and a breaker bar. Guys, this is the tools I need for this job that I have. Now what we'll do is the tool list, the specialty tools that I got from the store. Alright guys, this is our tools list. This is the specialty tools. So everything you see here, I paid a deposit and I borrowed it from the store. When I bring it back, I will get my deposit back. There's no actual rental. But we have a pickle fork set. We have a ball joint press. And then we have specific adapters for Honda. That's what it says here. Honda ball joint. And then guys, we also have a 32mm socket for the axle nut. So guys, for this job, the fact that I can just pay a deposit and then borrow these tools makes this job worth it. Even if you pay a rental fee, it makes it worth it. But this stuff here, if you were to spend the money on it, this is probably $600, where I would just pay a mechanic to do this for me. But guys, that's our tools list. So let's get started. Alright guys, first thing we're going to do is we're going to jack up the car. So this Honda Civic here, it has a jacking point here in the very front. So this is what I'm going to use. And once I jack up the car, we're going to throw a jack stand under the bearing point just behind the front passenger tire. Alright guys, so I got a 2x8 block, and then I've got a 5/8 steel plate here, just because I need a little more height. Alright, with the car up in the air, this is our jacking point. So what I'll do is I'll throw the jack underneath, and then I'll lower the car back down. Alright, first thing we'll do is we'll take off our 19mm lug nuts. Alright guys, first thing we'll do is we'll put some penetrating oil on the stuff that we have to take apart. So that's your upper ball joint. That is your outer tie rod end. We have a couple Phillips screws that hold on the rotor. We have our axle nut. We have our caliper bracket bolts. Alright guys, I'll let that soak in for a few minutes, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out and we're going to just loosen off the axle nut. Alright guys, first thing we need to do is we need to take off, or sorry, we have to deform the little punch. Alright, and now with a 32mm socket, this is a 32mm axle nut. Alright, that's loosened off. So what I'll do now is I'll take off the caliper bracket bolts. Because I have a limitation in tools here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my ratchet with a block. Alright, that's our bottom one. The two are the same size, so it doesn't matter, guys. Always take note of sizes and where they came from. Alright, we'll take our caliper, and then we're going to string it up to the spring on the suspension. Alright guys, so for our caliper bracket bolts, it goes into here and goes into here. It's just really tough to see with the rotor and everything else on. Alright guys, with that out of the way, right here we have 2 bolts. Alright guys, so these 2 bolts is for the brake line. These are 10mm. Alright, so for these 2 bolts, these are also the same. They're the same length, but what I'm going to do for these ones is I'm going to put them back in. Alright guys, we're going to take our number 3 Phillips with their 1/2" impact, and then we'll loosen the 2 off. Alright, with that done, the next thing we'll do is we'll take off our outer tie rod end. Alright, so this is our 17mm castle nut. We have a cotter pin that's holding it on, so we'll undo the cotter pin. Alright guys, I'm going to reuse the cotter pin, so I'll tap it back into shape. Alright guys, with the castle nut off, we'll take our pickle fork. Alright guys, we'll take the rotor off with this out of the way. Alright, so now we have our upper ball joint. Alright guys, first we're going to try to push the cotter pin out just a bit so I can grab it. Alright guys, there's our other cotter pin. So we'll take off the castle nut. Alright guys, so make sure that you keep the cotter pin and the castle nut for the top one separated. Alright, we'll grab a pickle fork and then we'll separate the 2. Alright guys, we'll take off our axle nut. Okay, so that's loose. Guys, if you need to, you can always tap this very gently. Alright guys, so this is our cotter pin. We'll pull this out, another 17mm. We'll take this off, and we should be able to take the steering knuckle off. Alright guys, I wound up breaking the cotter pin trying to take it out, but now we'll take out, or we'll separate our lower ball joint. Alright guys, to get the bottom ball joint, that was a tough one, but The steering knuckle is now released. So what we'll do is we'll take it over to the bench. Alright guys, this is our steering knuckle. So your tie rods for your steering connect to here. These two here are for your caliber bracket bolts. We have our ball joint here, and then the upper ball joint is here, bearing on the inside. So guys, I'm going to try to mimic the noise for you. Hopefully you can see this. Guys, that's how much play there is. There's about an 1/8 inch, about 3 millimeters, and that is what is creating the squeak. So what I'm going to do is I'll spray this down with some brake cleaner. Guys, we'll take our brush. Do a good job of trying to clean this up. And then we're going to put some penetrating oil onto it. And give it some time to soak. So guys, I let this soak last night. So it should be fine now. But what I'll do is I'll start to get the ball joint press into position. Alright guys, this is our ball joint press, and then this is the adapters for Hondas. So what I'm going to do is, to get the ball joint out, it needs to be pushed out this way. Alright guys, when we're going to push out or press out our ball joint, we want to be here, not, this is the actual ball joint here, so we want to be on here. So this one here came from the Honda set. That looks good. And then this one here, it has a hole in the middle. So that is going to go over. And then when we tighten it up, it's going to push this side out. Alright guys, so this is our setup. So this is going to push this in here. Guys, the key thing here is this whole thing needs to be straight. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. But everything looks good. So I'll put on the 1/2 inch impact and we'll blast this thing out. Alright guys, for this, I have earplugs and eye protection. And just like that, we are done. Alright guys, so we're going to compare our two. They look the same. They look the same. And they look the same. Guys, always make sure that your stuff is comparable. Your parts are comparable to your old ones. But what I'll do now is I'll blast this out with some brake cleaner. We'll clean this up. And then we'll get ready to install our new ball joint. Alright guys, with this all cleaned out, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a tiny bit of grease on the inside just to allow the new ball joint to slide in more easily. And guys, you just need a skim coat. You don't need much. Guys, with the boot being too far down, it's squishing the bottom end out, so you can try to pull the boot up as high as you can, just to get it to slide through. Alright guys, so we'll pull the boot up and then we'll tap it in a little bit just to get it started. Now guys, you need to make sure that the ball joint is nice and square going in. You want it to go in straight, not on an angle. Alright guys, so with that done, we're going to use our Honda adapter. We're going to put it on the outside, and then we're going to use our little cup adapter on the other side. Alright guys, this is our setup. So I've got the little top pad here. So this is going to push down, and then we have this here. But what I'm going to do now is I'll put the 22 on here, and as this pushes in, it's going to pull this side in. Now guys, the key thing here is to make sure that your ball joint is going straight. Like right now it's all lined up, but be aware if it starts to drift so you can back off and correct the issue. Alright guys, so we will press in our new ball joint. Again, earplugs and glasses. Alright guys, that's our new ball joint pushed in. You see the lip is all the way down. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get the clip on this side here. Alright guys, so I got the ring on here. So all I did was I put my needle nose in here into the 2 holes. I stretched it out and then I got it on. And then I used the needle nose to clamp it down as tight as I could. But guys, the ball joint is back on. So what we'll start now with is reassembly. So we're going to put our CV axle back into its place. And then we're going to put our ball joint in. Make sure it comes all the way through. Do it up just hand tight. So what we'll do now is we'll put on the castle nut for the new ball joint. Alright guys, this is our ball joint, so we will put our castle nut on. And then we'll torque it up so that pulls the ball joint down to the lower control arm. Alright, so we'll tighten up our castle nut. This is another 17 mil. Now guys, you're going to tighten up until you can see the hole between the grooves. So you have the grooves here, and then you want to see the hole to get the cotter pin through. Alright, so you guys can see the hole right there. So what we'll do is we'll put our cotter pin in through the hole. And guys, if it doesn't fit, you have to either loosen or tighten it a little bit. Alright guys, so we'll put our cotter pin in all the way. I'm not going to bend this yet. That'll be the very last thing that I'm going to do. But with this done, what we'll do is we'll raise this up to get the top into the upper control arm. Now guys, because this is under spring tension here, I'm going to take the jack to push it up. And then I'll put the castle nut on, and then I'll put the cotter pin in. Alright guys, so you can see where I put the jack. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to raise the lower control arm so I can connect the upper control arm back into the top of the steering knuckle. Alright, so there is our top castle nut. Guys, again, this is a 17 millimeter. And then align the castle nut so you can get your cotter pin in. Alright guys, now we will do our axle nut. So this needs to be at 130 foot-pounds. Alright guys, so you see the indentation here, and this is right where it was before, so I'm just going to pound this in to lock it in. Alright guys, to lock the axle nut back in, what you'll do is you take your flathead, and then you just pound it a couple times until you pound it back into the notch to lock the axle nut in. Alright, the next thing we'll do is the rotor. We'll put the 2 Phillips back in there and there. Alright, so the Phillips will go into here and here. You can see how it's a little bit different. They're countersunk to let the screws sit flush. Alright, now we will put our caliper back on. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll put our two 10mm brake line bracket bolts back in. Alright guys, so what I'll do is I'll bend the cotter pins around the studs to lock them in. I'll throw the tire back on, I'll torque it to 80 foot-pounds. I'll lower the car, I'll take it for a test drive, make sure everything's okay, and then we'll come back and do an overview of this job. Alright guys, so that concludes this job. I took the car for a long test drive. Everything sounds silent for a change. I'm very happy after listening to this thing for a couple of years. So there is no complaints on my end with this. Guys, the one takeaway, I really can't emphasize this enough, is having the proper tools for the job. The pickle forks, the ball joint press, and the Honda adapter. Without getting this stuff, I don't see how you could do this job. The 32mm socket, I got that as a, I put a deposit for the loan. And without that, there's no other way to do this. I don't have a 32mm socket because I never really need to take the axle nut off. Guys, the time on this job. The time was about 3 hours. I didn't run into any problems, and because I've already done previous work, everything was really easy to take apart. So I mean, it went really smoothly. The cost of this job: the ball joint, the grease, penetrating oil, and the brake cleaner were all about $60 in total. So guys, it's a relatively simple, straightforward job. You just need the right tools to get this job done. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. I hope something here is going to help you on your project when you need to go ahead and do that. Guys, until next time, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next project.